Here we are with On Point once again. Thanks for joining. I'm Milicevic, and today I'm joined by a really esteemed guest, James Arnott of the Texo Group. We've got some exciting news because we've just launching a new partnership with them, and I'm really excited about it because they're a fantastically innovative group of companies, but especially James's part, which is the DSI. So it's all about digital surveys and inspections, and I'm sure he'll tell you more about it. But generally, he's the UAE lead and general master and wizardry here on the at the company. So, James, welcome. Really good to be with you.
Good to have a chat today, Rod.
We've obviously been chatting for ages because it's one of those things. Since we've met, we could spend hours and hours because you are involved, or the group's involved, and you've been with them since early days. So maybe just a little intro of what you do and how you're doing it.
Well, I haven't been caught out for doing nothing yet, so I'm still no. So I've sort of been with Texo since its foundation, the Texo Group, when it started 5 years. Before that, I was the DSI division, which is still the longest one there. And DSI as a whole is drone survey and inspection. But really, drones are 30-40% of what we do. We care about the data, the digital innovation that we do, dimensional data, inspection data, you name it. We're kind of moving in those spheres, doing a lot across industries, and it keeps us extremely busy, and no 2 days are the same.
What are some of the things that you have to consider?
Public perception is a big part of what we do. And there's been, as an industry, I've just done a kind of a topic of thought piece with the team on this recently. It does shock me as an industry how there's so little barriers to entry and kind of proficiency levels in testing. You can go out and do your GVC A2 and virtually be on the same footing as a pilot like me who's been flying for 7 years across multiple industries. I've flown 50 plus different aircraft in my career here. And it's something that's what kind of keeps me up. How do we kind of talk to clients? How do we show them that there's a difference in levels? And I think that's where we're sort of leading by example with our own internal training programs, how we engage with the Civil Aviation Authority, which is kind of our governing body. A lot of people are always shocked to find out that it's not always HSE that we answer to, but the Civil Aviation Authority. So yeah, I would say probably my biggest thing is, as an industry, how are we kind of going from what's always been deemed as a hobbyist industry to actually a professional service? And I think that just starts from the ground up with how you interact with your clients, how you train your team, how you conduct yourselves. And that's kind of one of the things that, if I had to say what I do worry about is how do we change that perception of the industry as a whole?
So do you see, I mean, we talked about some of the technology from satellites, and people are, obviously there's a case for using stuff from satellites, but why drones rather than satellite? And
I always get this, and it's something that, so in my background, it's always about kind of efficiencies versus the kind of accuracy and clarity of that data, so to speak. So satellites, phenomenal mass data capture, better and better every year. But they can't go down to the granularity other things can. So your next step down would be then manned, so helicopters, planes, same thing, great coverage, but to a certain level of granularity of data before they just become inefficient. And you need a certain minimum size of area. And then drones sort of kind of broke the mold between manned and on foot, because suddenly there was a technology that kind of enabled you to cover vast areas very quickly, but to the level of detail in some areas that you were almost getting on foot. So it kind of, they've all got their place, they've all got their kind of pros and cons, and they're all very subtly different, in my opinion, on that one. And we see it a lot with agriculture. Agriculture is a great use for this. We've got satellites now with hyperspectral technology, which is my background. Crop health indices, great, but you're talking per pixel, 2.5 meters, so you can't tell if there's a weed in that 2.5 meter block or it's just everything else. So then you go down to manned, and your local farmer down the road is not going to call in a helicopter or a plane to start flying all his fields unless he's got some substantial sizes.
Yeah.
And then the drones came along, and it meant we were getting information down to centimetre level, which meant we were looking at a farm field and we were identifying individual weeds, we were identifying crop stress, we were identifying water deficiencies, which then led into precision agriculture. It meant that we could feed that information into the tractors and adjust the fertiliser ratios, the watering ratios, and even pesticide application via the tractors or even drones now. So it's really kind of up the game in kind of what we would call that precision data market.
So in the field that we're working in, and you know, facades. So we've obviously we're using the same sort of repositories, and we call ours FIMS, so Facade Information Management System, and that's really the essence of why it was such a strategic partnership to work with you guys, is because you know we couldn't even begin to scale up or try and take into all the. I mean, you guys are working with MOD and science labs and all the rest of it on so many platforms. We're a bit zeroed into facade and fenestration, and I know you've had exposure to that. Where do you think are some of the biggest challenges for buildings and structures, and where some of this can actually really help?
God, that's a tough one. For me, it's the information about the assets. And that's a lot of things working in the construction sector for a lot of the years that a lot of companies are missing, is that upfront information when it comes to making those decisions about their asset, whether it's their maintenance cycles, how they're going to maintain it, or the deconstruction process. You find a lot of people walking in, and at the beginning, if it was a BIM project, that information existed somewhere, it's lost to time. The number of projects I've worked on over the years with drones, with terrestrial scanning, with surveying, where they just don't have any information about their asset. They don't even have the fundamental dimensions, something we would take as a basic given, elevations, floor plan. They don't have. And then you move on from there. Well, what's the condition of it? Right, we've measured it all up. We know what it is. We know how much of glass we've got, or how much facade. What's the condition of it? How much of it needs repairing? Is it worth saving? How much of it is beyond repair? How much it is safety critical? Like, have we got stuff hanging off that building that is a threat to pedestrians below? Now, if you start looking at those questions, it turns into kind of something that will definitely keep you up at night. But that's where working with yourselves, what we're starting to do is kind of leverage that technology and expertise in the same hand. We're going in there and we're using scanning technology, drone technology to get the information, and essentially the drone is just a taxi for the sensors. We get them up into places that we can't get people easily, remove the hazard, and then we use the expertise of yourself and your team to kind of assess the data and go, actually, is this something that's that critical? Is it something that, in my vast experience, having been hands-on with this structure, is something that's going to evolve into a problem, or something that looks worse on the face of it, but actually you can leave it? I think that's kind of what we need in the building industry for this stuff, is that kind of partnership of that information, the expertise, and a platform to kind of get it across to people on, because it's all well and good having the survey tucked away on a hard drive somewhere, but how do you make that accessible to your entire team?
Yeah, I mean, interoperability, you know, when I first came across the word, you know, like there was two things, and I've been in it far too long, the glass and glazing of facades and from an installer point of view. But this O&Ms has always been a bugbear for me. And as I look through O&Ms, I'm thinking, I keep coming across the ISO standard 15686, which is all about life cycle assessment. And I think, but no one refers to it, you know, the design to it, but no one refers to it after. And then you mix that with interoperability. So if we're going to do some work, so we highlight something comes off it, how does it get put back into some asset information model? And that's where point clouds, for me, you know, like it's something went off in my head, and I thought, all right, point clouds, we do the work, we put that back into the point cloud, and it's there. It's almost like a blockchain.
Yeah.
And the accountability that comes with that, I think, you know, just makes you up your game, because quality of information equals quality of work. But, you know, take a step back, you know, you were expecting the quality of work to be really good, but there is no quality of information. Yeah. And this is where I started talking to clients saying, look, if we want to do a really good job, we need that information. If you haven't got it, we need to capture it. Yeah. And we've just done, you know, our first two case studies have been, you know, luckily, they've been two really big jobs. So, you know, we did that one at Woolwich, which is sort of an offshoot of the Grenfell problem. And capturing that in the way that we did, I mean, we threw everything at it, didn't we? Photogrammetry. Well, you tell me some of the
Woolwich one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Woolwich was photogrammetry, scanning, total station control, reflectorless shots for control at height, and multidiscipline for us. It was having pilots who could fly in congested areas, understood 3D geospatial data very well to accurately get the information at height so we weren't missing things. And do you know what, working with you guys, it's been something that we've been doing for like 2-3 years now, regularly. And it's always, one, the safety aspect. Why have unnecessary working at height just to get basic dimensions, when you can have the drone technology, the scanning technology where we can do it and draw it, and to the speed and the profitability and kind of the monetary value of it. If you can order everything in you need before you even get to the job, you've not got scaffold rental sat up there for weeks, months, sometimes now with suppliers being billed to that client, sat there and blocking people's views, everything. It's just kind of changed the game for a lot of those tower block surveys.
Yeah, so, I mean, certainly that, for what I found, it's because it's in 3 phases. We've managed to get a phase ahead, which I'm sure will prove a big benefit. But the other thing, which is when you're working in the EWS, you know, like a space of it's golden thread. So we are now, you know, we've got a benchmark. So we've got a benchmark of what it was like. As we're moving in, again, because we've got the point cloud, we can start layering in visual-rich data, which can be tested by anyone. So it's an audit, you go, external auditors come in and you can see what we've done, when we did it, how we did it.
It's a visual handover.
It's a visual handover, but that's there for as long as you want. You know, as long as you want that data, you can, you know, and many parties can use it. So, you know, the next time someone wants to paint it, that whole building, if they wanted to, they can scale up off that model. There's no more scaffold needed. No one has to go and measure it. So the time and efficiency, and as a result, I imagine the carbon impact or the reduction is huge.
And do you know what? I've got a really good one for that in terms of carbon footprint. Just a very basic carbon footprint. Offshore lighthouses. I've worked with a client for a number of years and they have 63 lighthouses. They upgrade 4 every year. So basically on the maths, a lighthouse will upgrade every 20 years. Now, to do this, they've got a number of them going through, and what they would do is fly contractors via helicopter offshore to assess them for part of their bid. And the helicopters are small, max 3-4 people in them, and you're talking they would have 20 bidders with their own teams, 20 helicopter trips out. We did one from a few years ago for Concept, and basically they did one trip with our guys out there. We digitised the whole thing. We did the 3D tours, we did the laser scanning for the point clouds, we did the drone inspection for the at height and underdeck stuff. We flew drones down into the hollow legs so people could assess it over 2 days. All this stuff got brought together, delivered it all on the digital platform, and they didn't have one bidder go out and not one bidder put in an uncertainty clause for unforeseen information.
Wow.
20 odd helicopter trips saved just from one digital survey.
Yeah, and everyone's on a level playing field. You know, anyone who's quoting has got exactly the same information.
But you've got more than one person looking at it. You know yourself, when you go to quote a job, you would send one of your best guys down there to have a look at it and assess it because they'll figure out all the problems. But you start using digital representations, your guys can do it from a desktop and quote 10 jobs in a day.
And also bringing in, I mean, what I found is the having, you know, on the platform now, and, you know, using lots of different, sometimes it's LiDARs layered in, is the collaboration. Is, you know, there's the guy who's gone out, if he's missed something, but you've got 3 or 4 technicians or 3 or 4 people that have come from different industries, and they look at it with fresh eyes, they go, oh, right, okay, we've seen that, we could do that, we could change it. You could bring a client in and you go, right, this is what, you know, and I think this is what I've seen, certainly when we did the NatWest one, is showing the client when they're seeing parts of their building that they've never been out there, because they're not, you know, you're not going to go up 20 floors and look at something off the edge of a canopy because you're not an abseiler or a rope access technician guy. And they're seeing that and they go, okay, I can understand that. And any recommendations they can push up lines, so all of a sudden that go all around the world.
Actionable evidence.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing that I've, you know, like, it's really out my eyes of how we should be doing business going forward. But you guys are a little bit ahead of this whole thing. So in sort of like the style of the point, really, you know, I ask, so where's the potential, if we maybe bring it into sort of our world of facade and fenestration, you know, where's the biggest potential for growth or improvement, or, you know, even adhering to compliance and things like that? Do you
prioritising the information that we get to make sure that the effective stuff is in front of that client? We can spend weeks on a building, but is it information the client needs or wants? Not all the time. So how do we prioritise? And that for me is kind of the big thing with FIMS, is looking at what information is actually essential to the management of that building. What is a nice to have that when something goes wrong, you've got it to refer to as a digital timestamp? And what is something that's going to change how they do their maintenance regime, is going to change what budgetary constraints they have, it's going to change how they run that building. That's, I think, kind of the future development and where we need to be going with it is we've got all this great tech here to gather all this information. How do we prioritize it for the user?
If that's a sort of the potential and the challenge to rise to that, where's the opportunities? What are we not already using, or maybe where are estate owners and property managers? Where's the opportunity to help them? Because obviously they're a hero of the game, yeah. So they're on a daily basis. They're looking after these things, and we're effectively enablers and supply chain partners.
And definitely, I mean, for estate managers and things like that, it's kind of that educational piece is important. A lot of them don't understand the technology. I mean, we live, eat, breathe it every day. So for us, what we take for granted is something that's completely alien. And I think that's one of the big things we're going to have to push on, because I love your 1,000 challenge to get 1,000 buildings done this way. And I think that is a very small stepping stone to what it could become. But I think big part of that stepping stone is client education. It's going to be working with your clients to go, yes, I know on the face of it, you think, oh, well, I've always done this way, why should I change it? But actually, let me show you something that's going to make your life easier. It's going to help you manage your estate. It's going to make you more efficient. It's going to make you shine against the rest of your team and help you stand out in the crowd and go, actually, I'm leading the way in innovation here. I'm not just stepping to the same beat.
Yeah, great point. And okay, so the impact, what's the impact of not doing this or not using, do you think?
I think, for me personally, it's the risk of at-height objects. And it always terrifies me working in this industry when I walk around places like urban environments. Take London, for example. Once you start working at height with drones and seeing what's there, you never look at the sidewalk the same again. You're always looking up. And I think that is one of the big risks, is not adopting technology like this. As an asset owner, in my mind, you're not responsible for your asset. You're not doing your duty of care to make sure it's not going to cause harm to others. And that, for me, is a big step in the change of the mindset of people going, yeah, we'll get a drone down, we'll have a few looks, but actually what are we doing with that data? How am I going to use that to manage the safety of the people that are working around and in my building, and also the general public walking past?
Yeah.
I think if asset owners stay blind to the kind of hazards and dangers of that, it's just, in my mind, it's not okay. It's got to be a step change in safety and how we manage these things. Have
you seen any engagement with insurers? Because I'm surprised that I'm always surprised that a facade is not on a risk register yet.
Yeah.
Like where everything else seems to be.
Yeah.
So have you had any interaction with insurers or?
A few over the years. A lot of their focus is on roofs, because where they're disconnected from that industry, I think they don't acknowledge all the kind of minutiae of what goes into a facade and different interacting parts and all the different risks that could fall off it.
Yeah.
So they just assume facade, straight brick wall, straight solid wall, couple of glass windows and a door. Yeah, okay, the roof, we've got tiles, we've got chimneys, we've got furniture, we've got everything else up there, and people forget that the facade is just as lethal for dropped object potential.
Yeah.
I think it's just that education.
Right.
And it's, I mean, would anyone ever know the stats to dig into HSE to find out people injured from dropped objects off buildings? How many came from facades to how many came from the roof?
One for ChatGPT.
Yeah, that.
I'd love to sort of like sit on some of these steering committees for insurance companies.
I mean, that comes into play with like the fire regulations now after Grenfell changing. Like, people are having to get this information about their assets, not just for insurance, but safety.
Yeah. The Building Safety Act, really demands it.
If you look at it, it should go hand in hand with insurance, because you're looking at the risk to human life. That's also the risk to the building, because the thing that's going to harm humans is also going to harm your building.
Yeah.
And if we're gathering that information for that, why are we not looking at extending that approach beyond buildings that are below a certain story? Because that information is extremely valuable to asset owners and insurance companies. I mean, there's a phenomenal one for an ecclesial insurance company about digitising digital twins, essentially that we would go in and digitise building structures, artefacts, because they've then got a historical record that, God forbid anything happened, like Notre Dame, you could build it brick by brick.
Yeah.
You could restate it, you could document digitally that artefact for the rest of the time. So that should come with an insurance premium drop, because you've actually gone out your way to make sure that's being looked after.
Yeah.
And that digital footprint is becoming a big part of our lives, and especially with things like metaverse being thrown about all the time. Is how long before we stop living in that kind of...
Yeah. Well, I think from an education, I mean, I got into this whole Web3 and metaverse, and I think it will come into its own time, it's probably, like all these things, like EFTs, blew up, and then it's gone a bit quiet. But from an educational point of view, there's some places that you just can't get into.
Yeah.
You can't just fly off and well, you can, but like there's a cost to sort of like taking children into different spaces that might be a health and safety risk. If, let's say we wanted to walk around Fukushima, but that has been droned, and that has been there is a model that you can walk around and see the whole thing.
I actively work on the nuclear sector in digitising areas that, let's just say, you don't want to spend too much time in waste contamination facilities and things like that. And it's phenomenal, because before you'd be doing safety inductions for people that are going to go work in those areas, and you'd have to walk them through it. Well, as now you can do it from a desktop, and using that kind of digital twin, digital threaders, it's evolved from not just looking at how do I fix the instant problem now, it's looking at secondary things like, if I digitise this, say I'm doing my safety induction, do I physically need to take those staff all the way around the office, spend all day doing it, or can I digitise it so they can all do it in their own leisure, they can crack on for it, they can go more in depth than they ever would with a tour guide who's probably maybe a bit tired or grumpy that day, and really get to grips with it.
Transformation, what do you think needs transforming, both in either a process or the industry, or like the way of, is there something that you think, why are we still thinking like that when we can do this?
In facade management's working at height. The other one that's big for me is confined space working. We have drones that do visual inspections routinely in it, and I still see people sending personnel into them. And that one always is it because you've not been educated about the opportunities out there to use other tech, or because you don't trust it, or because you're just oblivious to it? And it's one of the hard ones. And I mean, definitely jumping back to the working at height stuff, I look at some jobs and I talk to people. Like, I still hang about with friends I used to work with in the scaffolding industry, and they'll come down, meet up for a beer and have a catch up. What were you doing today? Oh, I was putting 3 lifts on this, or 12 lifts on this tower. Well, what was it for? Oh, they just wanted to get up and have a look at the roof, see what condition it was in, so they could order everything. I'm like, why are people still doing this? Like, there's technology out there that, yes, it doesn't solve everything. You can't get hands-on, you can't do tap testing, you can't do certain things, but you can get a great first look and a general assessment, and you can rule out a lot from the visuals. You can go, right, yeah, I can't diagnose it, I'll put that on the list, but I've done 1,000 buildings and 900 of them, I can't see any indicators. Let's rule them out.
When we're doing thermography, you can actually see where the building's leaking. So then you go, okay, well, it makes sense, because actually the cost of it, financial cost of, if a building's, costing you, I don't know, £1 million, you're gonna, by making some changes that insightful data that we're talking about, that insightful data could save you £300,000. And then you put that in the cost of what a survey's got to cost you, the payback is ridiculous.
But clients don't always acknowledge that. And I think that's where it's important working with people like yourselves to establish those case studies, and those, for me, the figures always speak. When I walk into a client in industries about using drones in indoors for fire compartmentation inspection, I've got a case that I can pull out in the nuclear industry, that they had a £6.5 million scaffold bill, and we did it for £250,000 to do all these same inspections using drones. And straight away, that's the proof's in the pudding for the client. They're like, bang, yeah. But if I'd walked up to them in the first instance and said, look, I've got 250 grand here for the drone survey, so everything that we're going to do inside, they'd have gone, no. The trust wasn't there, but because you've got that case study and that history and those few clients that have taken the leap of faith and done it, you then got that material to go back and go, look, guys, this works. Because people are skeptical. People's jobs are on the line. And it's one of the things I've learned, that yes, we like to be innovative and things, but when it comes down to it, you don't want to do something that could put you in a position that you're losing your job because you've invested in something that's crazy. So I think for us, it's that proof's in the pudding, demonstrating that over with case studies, multiple clients over the years. And that's one of the things I'm really proud of we've managed over the years here, is we've started small with clients, low-hanging fruit, stuff that's not going to damage their business, and built that trust. Until we get the bigger stuff where they go, do you know what, I trust what you're saying, let's just do it. And then you've got that big case study to go to the next client and go, yeah, we've done all the baby steps growing, and here's where we got to. Why don't you skip all the baby steps in time and jump straight in?
Okay, so and maybe that's a great place to end. What would you, with this, we mentioned our newfound relationship. What would you say to potential customers that could benefit from what we do, what you do, and really get the benefit of best of what we do.
I think it's that partnership of the innovation, technology, and the knowledge and experience between both. I mean, Texo spent a lot of years developing ourselves in the market, how we operate, what we do, how we do it, developing a lot of techniques to operate in areas that other drone users just can't and survey users don't have the expertise to do. And with yourselves, it's the years of experience operating on these facades, installing them, maintaining them, working. You can't put a price on that for me. You understand these things inside out. So when someone looks at an image or looks at a thermal plot or looks at this, you can go, well, yeah, great, we're losing heat here, but it's because of this, this, and this. And actually the glass isn't your problem, but the gasket. Because I've seen that unit before and I know the gasket's always failed. That's where the real kind of partnership comes into it and the value. Because I can look at a thermogram and go, yeah, you're losing heat here, but it takes someone like you to go, oh yeah, what type of window was that? Yeah, they always have that problem. And that's the magic of it.
Excellent. James, thank you so much. That was really insightful. I learned a lot, and it's always an inspiration. It's, you know, like on and off the camera, listening to some of the stuff that you're doing, it's always triggering something. I hope, hopefully to the viewers as well, hopefully all listeners, that you've picked up something and it stimulated something, whether you're in estates or facility management. Yeah, give us a call, either company, and we'll see if we can help.
Cheers, thanks for having me. It's been great. I always enjoy catching up.